Hi, and welcome to the Punk CX podcast. My name is Adrian Swinsko, and I'm an advisor, best-selling author, speaker, and general explorer when it comes to customer and employee experience. I'm really interested in figuring out what it takes to build organizations that produce better outcomes for both customers and employees. So with that in mind, I seek out and interview CEOs, entrepreneurs, business and tech leaders, authors and academics to uncover some clues about what it takes to build such an organization. Now, some of you may know the podcast as the Rare Business Podcast, but I decided to rename and rebrand the podcast recently. This is for a number of reasons. First one was to mirror the title of my book, Punk CX, which was published in June 2019. Two, because I'm a fan of punk music. And three, it's just more fun, right? Anyway, if this is your first time listening to one of these interviews, then hello and welcome. And please do dive into the archives at adrianswinsko.com, as I've now completed over 300 of these interviews in the last few years. If this is not your first time listening, then welcome back and thank you. Anyway, that's enough for me right now. Let's get into the interview. So welcome to the next edition of the Punk CX podcast. With me today, I have Joe Andrews and Martin Schneider, who are both from Support Logic. Now, Joe is the CMO and Martin is the Chief Evangelist and Head of Solutions Marketing at Support Logic. So, hey, Joe. Hey, Martin. How are you both doing?
Fantastic. Hey, Adrian. Great to be here.
Likewise. Doing good. Thanks for having us.
You're very welcome. Now, so we don't do this very often. It's usually just a one-on-one with me, and therefore it doesn't feel like it's like a slugfest, as it were. Now I feel like there's like a gang of you, and you've both got kind of black t-shirts on, and I've got a green one, so it looks like I'm on the green team and you're on the black team. On an audio recording, that's going to sound a bit weird when people are listening into this, but trust me, this is right. But in turn, I want to come to you and just ask you to give us a bit of a thumbnail sketch on yourself and the work that you do and what Support Logic's about, just to give people a bit of a context about kind of what about yourselves, as it were. So, Joe, I'll come to you first, if you will.
Yeah, fantastic, and thanks again for having us. So, Joe Andrews here, CMO of Support Logic. My history is 30 years or so in the tech industry. Originally Boston-based, but been out in the Bay Area in Silicon Valley for the past 20 plus years, the last decade or so with innovative high growth SaaS companies, and really excited to be at Support Logic. I've been here about 2 years, and we'll get into it. But in essence, what we're doing is we are on a mission to help companies transform the role of support and improve the way that they deliver support experience for their customers. And so we've got a lot to unpack today, but that's me in a nutshell, and thanks for having me.
Joe, that's brilliant. Thank you. Martin, over to you, sir.
Sure thing. So Martin Schneider, Chief Evangelist with Support Logic. I come more from the CRM side of things. I was also an industry analyst. So I've been in the CRM, customer experience, whatever it is called these days,
who knows?
Space for the past 20, who knows? For the past 20 plus years. Like Joe, been at some high growth companies, part of the move from on-prem to SaaS, cloud nowadays. Seen a lot of really cool things happen, especially in the CRM space. What really excites me about Support Logic and this transformational role that we're trying to take is, we're finally seeing what I would call kind of value-driven and insight-driven solutions for a space that has talked a lot about them for almost 30 years, and we're finally making it real. And we'll like I said, we'll unpack that, but it's a really cool time, and it's really exciting to be at a company like Support Logic right now.
Awesome. That's kind of cool. Yeah, and I know that there's a particular thing that we were talking about, because we were talking about in the setup of this podcast, we were talking about product-led growth and how it gets a lot of attention in the SaaS world. And a lot of people don't know that about product-led growth. It's a sort of a thing. It sits there. A lot of people are kind of doing it. But you also said that product-led growth has a problem. And I was like, what? You're like going, it's a sacred cow. You're about to kind of like slay the sacred cow. But before we get into the problem bit, I wanted to back up a bit and address this thing, PLG that
that sounds like a Michael Jackson song, doesn't it? Kind of Pretty Young Thing. It sounds like a song.
PLG.
Yeah, PLG. So first of all, I'll come to you, Joe. Maybe you can explain to us what kind of product-led growth of PLG, what it is and where it comes from.
Would love to. So first of all, product-led growth is fairly new. I think it was officially covered in 2012. So we're talking about a decade, but then only officially named the phrase in 2016. OpenView Partners, the VC firm, and in particular, a person we work closely with, Kyle Poyer over there, has done a lot of great research and advocacy around it in terms of driving their investment strategy. Now, let me set up a couple of things about product-led growth. So at its core, product-led growth is a go-to-market strategy. Right? It is a focus on using the product itself as a marketing lever and also a channel, and emphasizing the product over what's called the traditional sales-led go-to-market motion and traditional marketing channels to sell the product. And in addition, I should mention, it's only been around for a decade, but there's been tremendous growth in the last few years. I think there are 40-ish public companies now that are PLG led, product led. And then in a recent poll, I saw 60% of cloud companies are leaning into the product-led growth GTM motion. Okay. And over 90% of those companies, and these are the very best cloud companies, say that they're investing more in PLG as a strategy. So it's clearly here to stay. The other thing, there are some great data points out there around valuations and growth for product-led. Product-led companies, grow faster once they get over that 10 million ARR number, and their valuations tend to be much higher as public companies.
Okay.
So that's why product-led growth and what product-led growth is.
Right. I mean, but I know that because we were talking about this, and then you talked about OpenView, and that's fine. I went away and looked at some of the background. So I also understand it sits on these kind of like three pillars. There's like principles in a way of kind of how it approaches these things. And can you explain to me what these three pillars are and kind of what it ends up helping people kind of do sort of differently, as it were, to kind of help us understand what this product-led growth or PLG sort of approach kind of is?
Fantastic. And first, I'll contrast it with the traditional enterprise sales-led model, which is all about you make a product, you hire a sales team to go out and sell it, and you build marketing programs and campaigns to drive awareness and then interest through all stages of the sales funnel. Now, what PLG does is essentially flip that on its head. So the three pillars you reference, first and foremost, is PLG companies design for the end user, not the buyer.
Right. Okay.
In B2C models, in simplistic products, the buyer and the user tend to be the same. In B2B models, they tend to be different. You may have an enterprise IT buyer, a CIO, where the requirements for that person to buy and commit to a product are very different than the actual problems that the product solves for the user. Take web conferencing technology. Think back 5 years, 8 years to the early players in that space. It was all designed around how to make sure the CIO and the IT department felt comfortable with this communication going on over the web, right? So security, scalability, those things were most important, and probably what got sacrificed was the usability. Then along came Zoom, right before the pandemic. We're on a Zoom call now. Think about how easy it was and how intuitive it was for an individual user to sign up for that and actually use the product. So that's pillar number one, design for the end user.
And it does address that sort of big problem, particularly in things like, I guess, digital transformation programs or any sort of change kind of initiative around adoption. And that sort of difference between there's who buys it and then who gets, so a lot of time people, particularly on the front line, or people that are just working, delivering the values or creating stuff. serving and helping people, they get a lot of times they get stuff foisted on them, and then they've got to like figure out, and that's why the adoption curve is kind of like so. Well, sometimes it's just flat lines, but rather than actually kind of tipping up, this is like saying, well, actually, if we start at the end, we start with design with the end in mind, as it were, then we'll take care of the buyer concerns kind of like along the way, I guess.
Exactly. And product-led is all about adoption. So we talked about the pillars. Pillar number 2 is deliver value before capturing value. Let's unpack that a little bit.
Okay.
This speaks to the heart of adoption, which is in the sales-led model, you sell something, you collect money for something, and then you try to, as you said, push the adoption on the users. Here, what we're trying to do in a product-led model is deliver value. So turn on the product, make the user buy into, I want this experience, I want to solve this pain point and problem, and I'm going to adopt it in a B2C model, in a B2B model. I'm going to get my whole team and department on it because there's value in us all using it. And then we will pay this company that's offering this product. And there's lots of mechanisms we could go deeper on, like freemium model, self-service trial, et cetera, that help do that. But it's all about driving adoption by delivering value before capturing value.
And the third pillar?
The third pillar is about investing in the product with go-to-market intent, because today or up until PLG, there's sort of been this disjointed functional organization where you build a product, you go out and sell it. But engineering and product resources need to look at what are the things within the product that can make it intuitive, make it to adopt, make it viral. So if I'm using it internally, I'm going to share it with my colleague, Martin, because we're going to get even more value from it. Those things tend to be afterthoughts in products with sales-led growth models. But in product-led, it's about the product is the go-to-market. So that's where you want to invest and you want to drive that intent.
And I mean, because I'm thinking about it, and I'm listening to you can hear, and I'm thinking about the idea that I'd like to think that much of this is like self-evident. I'm like going, why would you not do that? But I know it's not, and I can't remember the figures, but I was looking up, and I think that I saw the figures, like it might be wrong. But correct me if it is wrong. But only like 25% or so thereabouts of SaaS companies are using this PLG sort of strategy. I mean, crumbs, why is that?
It's an evolution, right? I mean, when you look at PLG and you look at what's coming before it, they were also kind of evolutionary, revolutionary, whatever you want to call it. And it's almost like a like a teleology, right? Where it's action, reaction, action, reaction. We're evolving from SaaS, cloud, free trial, inbound marketing. All of these things come together to enable the concept of product-led growth. And we're not, it's not that we're 50 years away from the old models. We're only, there's companies that still haven't fully migrated over to the cloud, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of legacy technology companies, for example, that they're just not, from a DNA perspective, ready to be a PLG company, right? For a lot of different reasons, right? And it's obviously easier for startups to to do this, right? Because you're born in the cloud, you're selling to sometimes even different generational buyers, right? Who have different expectations. So there's a lot of evolutionary things that need to be set up for this to become the order of the day, and not just a new thing that some companies are discovering and then some are just being born into, right? But it's changing really fast, because to Joe's point, when you look at the kind of hockey stick growth that some of these companies can do, it's amazing. Secondly, there's established companies that don't like the unpredictability of product-led growth, right? Because there's always that, well, if I land someone at a very low cost, easy entry point, what's my guarantee that I'm going to get X plus or 5x, what is that, right? So how does so boards and investors and others sometimes haven't really fully embraced that. Some get it, some don't. And it's always when we look on the other side of a, say, 2, 3, 4 year cycle, we say, wow, that was impressive. When we look at what Slack has done and the exits that they had and what companies like Snowflake are doing. So it's people go in there with some trepidation because there is a lack of predictability. But if you believe in your product, you're doing it right, and you can deliver it in the manner that PLG requires, there's incredible upside for a lot of companies. So I think people are just discovering it now. And it's, what is it? It's the Beatles, right? 10-year overnight success.
Yeah. You mentioned the 25% who are using it. I think those are PLG native SaaS companies. Right. And then 60% are leaning into it. So we believe that delta is the sales-led traditional model companies who are now trying to pivot.
Yep.
And just to add to what Martin was saying, it's not as easy as build a great product and they will come.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's not.
This is hard stuff, and it's hard. There's some great sayings about how hard it is to disrupt yourself. If you're a $1 billion+ company,
exactly,
that's been built on a sales-led model, how do you throw that all away and pivot to this new model? And that is largely the big blocker for this change management.
It's analogous to the move to subscription revenue, right? All of those big public companies fought it as long as they could because they said for 3-4 quarters our comps are going to be horrible. Yeah. And what are investors going to do, right? And they didn't understand the new model yet. The subscription economy, which Joe was one of the people who helped really kind of frame that with Zora. It really, that changed everything. Where people, you go and start a technology company, you say, I want to do perpetual licensing. People would look at you like you're crazy, So it's that kind of thing. So I think we're in a paradigm shift for that, and we're just right in the middle of it, and we're kind of realizing it, which is really cool. So but it's hard. It's like saying to somebody, go make a viral video. When we talk about, the virality of the product.
I remember that when that was a thing about 4 years ago, it's like going, everyone needs a viral video. And you're like going, as if only there was a recipe for creating a viral.
Exactly. There's no exact recipe yet. We're learning it. We have the pillars and we understand it, but executing it is really hard. And that's where the magic kind of lies in the details.
Yeah. But, Martin, you mentioned the kind of the pillars and stuff, and I wanted to circle back to that sort of thing around the problem bit that I mentioned earlier. Because as you say, this idea of PLG, it's quite young, it's evolving, it's kind of like growing its kind of footprint in terms of an approach. But you believe that there's a missing piece, or like a missing pillar, as it were, of PLG. Martin, what's the missing leg of the stool?
That's great. So the missing pillar, as it were, is the support experience. It's very much related to the second pillar Joe was talking about, in that, if you're going to deliver value before you capture value, and we're going to have adoption before we have a sale, and you're going to do all those things, the support experience, especially in B2B technology PLG, is really critical. And for a number of reasons. One is, if you're kind of disintermediating that sales-led process, and people are using before they're engaging in more, official ways with the company, they're going to have issues. They're going to have questions. They're going to run into situations where the technology isn't doing everything they expect it to, right? And in former models, they would become already a customer. They would have signed up. They have, logins to this, that, and the other thing, and they're logging cases. And that's fine because they're already a customer, and we'll solve those cases and we'll get to but right now, your support experience is kind of your marketing experience, because when people are coming in and they haven't signed the big contract yet, they're on a freemium version or something like that, and they say, hey, this was supposed to do this, it's not doing this, I have a question. Answering that question completely, quickly, and in a way that makes that person realize, hey, this company knows what they're doing. The product does what it says. It's going to work for my business. That's going to increase the likelihood of getting that big contract, not a golf outing and a sales dinner, like in the old days, right here, where it was relationship driving it, not necessarily the product driving it, right? So if the product's going to drive it and your product is your best marketing, well, the way that you support that product needs to be a key pillar in how you go to market. And that's really one of those things that kind of, even in the entire transition over to the subscription economy, the SaaS economy, cloud economy, that kind of got left. And that was the last thing to start transforming. And that's why it's so exciting for us right now, because people are, PLG companies and SaaS companies alike, where there's a lot of similarities in how they deliver, free trial, free that, they're understanding that support kind of leads sales, right? Because if they have a great experience learning about the product first and feeling 100% confident that this is a product for us, not only are they going to convert into a sale, but now you've got them already adopting, you've got them already understanding, you've got them already invested. So therefore, expansion, revenue, cross-sell, all those things become so much easier than they would without that type of model in place. So it's really about setting the table in the best possible way. And in PLG specifically, having a great support experience is critical to that happening, right? Yeah. So that's what's really, getting us excited. Joe's got a point.
Yeah, one point to add to that. So as Martin said, support experience is critical at every stage of the customer journey.
Yeah,
in a subscription and in a PLG model. Let's talk about that front end of acquiring new customers. I think the model in the freemium world, which freemium is a very popular channel for acquiring customers in PLG companies, is roughly 4 to 5% of people that come to your website will convert to a freemium trial or freemium, start using your free product. And then a much smaller percentage, 2% of the overall visitors that come in will convert to a paid customer.
Right.
So roughly a half to a third of the people that start using the freemium product. So imagine if you could double that. Paid users. That's at the heart of where the support experience comes in early in the customer life cycle.
Yeah, no, I think it's perfect. I mean, I think there's two things. I mean, first of all, when people talk about support experience, they often kind of like jump to post-purchase. And you're like, no, support means kind of like support across the piece. I was speaking to kind of a client around, doing a project, and they were talking about there's two main points where their customers kind of like complain or would like them to be better, let's say, and it's like going answering kind of pre-sales sort of questions. I'm shopping around and I want to ask a question because it's not obvious and if I get that, it's going to help me kind of make my purchasing decisions. And the second thing is, I've got the product, I've started to use it, but I have some questions because I have some problems or some snags or whatever and I want to get more out of it. So the whole support thing exists across sort of the piece. But then there's a bigger thing that reminds me of. It reminds me of a piece of research that, I think it was ClickFox did back in the day. I don't think ClickFox is around. I think they got acquired or something. Yeah. But I thought it was a beautiful piece of research that they did, and I've never seen it repeated. So I'm going to assume that it still holds. And they kind of like said that their research showed that 90% of all loyalty was driven by what happens on 2 points on the kind of customer's journey. And it was about just over 50% of that 90% was what happened around the whole buying and initial sort of use experience. I make it easy for me to buy, make it easy for me to use, make it easy for me to get started, etc. And the rest of the 90% was explained by what happens when something goes wrong. I have got a question post-purchase, and that explains kind of like 90%. If you get those two things kind of like right, as it were, then you've got like 90% of your loyalty kind of covered. And it's like only the remaining 10% that's taken care of with, I don't know, gimmicks and discounts and programs and fancy cards and loyalty programs and rewards and stuff. And I just thought, that might be my kind of like, it's sort of a confirmation bias type thing. Because I almost like looked at that and was like going, of course, that makes complete sense, right? but it's almost aligned to what you're saying as well.
Absolutely.
That product experience is like going, well, of course it is, because loyalty
Exactly.
is just, I guess, another proxy name for use and adoption and value and all of those different sort of things.
And that's the support experience, kind of in a nutshell, right? And that's the irony, is that it's been mildly ignored, because in the whole CX world, especially around B2C, people have focused on marketing and engagement and that kind of thing. And really where it comes down to it is keeping your, your brand experience high and your loyalty high and all those things, keeping those metrics where you want them to be. It really does boil down to the support you provide. Mm-hmm. And that's the irony, right? Is that hasn't been invested in. That's been looked at as a cost center for far too long. And it's just been, keep it flat, keep it under wraps, keep the costs down. And that's, people should be investing in it the way they invested in their marketing over the last, couple of decades. And that's the kind of crushing irony of the companies that do that. They do invest in it. They outperform incredibly. And the companies that don't, some of them don't exist that were big names years ago. It's interesting.
But it's also the other thing around it's not just about your plain old vanilla ramping up support resources. I mean, this is like support plus, right? This is support in an integrated kind of fashion that's integrated with product design and development and all these different sort of things. So you kind of you're helping people, but you're drawing kind of down data and you're feeding it back into the product development, into roadmaps and everything else. So you're doing that sort of whole closing the loop in a real-time active kind of like fashion as well. And that's the key difference, right? It's not just about people and platforms, but it's also about data flows and insight and development and all these different things as well.
That's exactly right. One of the key missing pieces, we call it sentiment. Measurement, sentiment analysis, and the ability to act on customer sentiment in real time. That's what's different today. And many companies that we work with traditionally run their support on a few key metrics: CSAT, NPS, time to resolve cases, incidents, and then they look at all the economic factors Martin was talking about, the cost center. One of my early jobs many years ago for a software company was in support operations, and we were very focused on first call resolution and net promoter score, right? The one metric to measure the health of your customers by. The challenge with that is you're looking in the rearview mirror, you're surveying customers, very small sample, there's sample bias, but most importantly, the results you get back, because you're looking at interactions that happened 30 days ago in some cases, you're not able to act on. You're not able to improve the customer experience. And what is happening now is the best companies are analyzing the customer sentiment and scoring the sentiment. How are they feeling real time? And then driving automated actions to improve that customer experience in real time. And that's what Support Logic is focused on.
Okay. So I know that you are, how do they say this? I don't know. I hate the expression, but I'm going to use it anyway. Eating your own dog food, as it were. And you're taking this kind of PLG type of kind of model, but also kind of it's on the four pillars. But I wanted to kind of ask you, maybe if you can both maybe give me an example of brands that you're working with that are sort of, I feel like, embracing this approach, what they're doing and how they're benefiting with working with yourselves to bring it all sort of to life. So Joe, I'm going to come to you first.
Okay. Yeah, I'll talk about a couple of customers we're working with, and then pass it to Martin, who's been working with one of our biggest customers in one element of this. So a couple of the PLG companies we're working with are Fivetran and Databricks. And the common thread there is what I was just talking about, sentiment analysis and sentiment scoring. Fivetran and Databricks are both data infrastructure companies that use a product-led approach to drive initial adoption and then success and growth and retention in their customers. Fivetran in particular was doing a lot of experimentation with freemium model and that conversion rate. And they were going after new market segments, like going from mid-market and larger enterprise down to SMB. And the change in their targeting approach required that they deliver a different type of a support model to make them successful. And so one of the things that they addressed was they switched from some of the lagging indicators to this more proactive indicator of sentiment scoring, and were able to improve the customer experience in real time and reduce customer churn by 25% in those new markets that they were going after using Support Logic.
Nice.
So that's a fantastic case study we're really proud of. We done a webinar with them on our website. The other one is Databricks. I'm not going to go into depth on that, but it's a similar story in terms of transitioning from lagging indicators to leading indicators using sentiment analysis and sentiment scoring to improve CX across all the dimensions of support, everything that we're talking about today.
So on that kind of sentiment sort of stuff, if I can just drill into that a little bit. So can you explain to me how you're using the sentiment analysis? Is that helping you identify what the priorities are for the kind of both for the companies and also the kind of the customers to order to prioritize actions? Is that's how it's working? Because I know if you're a company and you're dealing with thousands and thousands of users and customers and so on and so forth, it's like it could be like a big fog. You've got all this kind of like feedback and data.
You're pulling out the needles in the haystack.
Yeah. That's what you're actually doing using the
That's exactly what we're doing. I think there's a stat, what is it, Martin? 60 or 70% of all B2B interactions happen through the support channel. Yeah. And what we're doing is enabling companies to capture those interactions. And the difference between what we do in prior methods is that we're capturing unstructured data. This is all the rich text that comes in through emails and voice calls that are transcribed at whatever the channel is. And unlike previous systems that just captured the metadata, like drop-down menus, severity, type of issue, urgency, we're asking an agent to make a judgment call on these things. We're capturing the actual voice of the customer, and then using natural language processing and AI, we're able to look to surface insights like sentiments. Is the customer frustrated? Is the customer angry? What are the core issues? We have a topology of product keywords that map into this, like, the most prevalent issue is with this operating system that's, or this application that's interconnected with whatever they're doing. And then we're able to guide recommendations, what agent to assign this case to. We look over the historical context in the case history. So it's content and context aware. We're not just looking at one interaction, by itself. And then we're able to apply intelligence and recommendations that feed actions that the customer can take in the moment to improve real time the customer experience.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. No, that makes kind of like sense because about how it kind of like works.
I did want to share have Martin share one more anecdote from one of our PLG customers.
Of course.
So we're working with Snowflake, which is one of the largest PLG companies, very successful public data infrastructure company, and they've been very focused on agent coaching as a lever to improve CX. Martin, you want to tell that story?
Okay.
Yeah. So one of the cool things, we talk about sentiments, but really it comes down to the kind of signals that we can pull out and all the things we do with AI, ML, NLP. And what we co-design with them is a product that we call ACE. It really means agent coaching and case evaluation. It should be like ACE with a little 2 on top, right? Like you can see. So, but it's really interesting because what we're able to do is, when you're actually trying to keep agents happy so that they keep the customer happy, when you're trying to engage with them, you're reviewing their work, you're trying to give them coaching without the magic of AI, the magic of these signals and the sentiment, the things that we can pull out. A manager has to literally go and read cases. And if you're familiar with how case management tools work and the actual like interactions of emails and transcripts and things get kind of tucked into those things, it's incredibly arduous.
Mm-hmm.
It takes hours to do one review of an agent for their weekly review, their monthly review, their quarterly reviews. So we wanted to change the game on that and make that something that is continuous and effortless, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is now what we're doing is we're constantly reading the cases and we're identifying the same way that we're looking at customer signals that tell us, are they frustrated? Might they escalate? Might they churn? Those types of things. We're saying, well, how is the agent performing, right? And what are they doing right, either against your standard rubric of engagement? You know, are they doing the right feedings? Are they citing knowledge articles? Are they pointing to the links and all those things? So there's a bit of the procedural, and then there's also the soft skills. So we're pulling that up because we have the ability to pull that nuance. And instead of having someone have to go hunt for that and spend hours, it's minutes looking at, okay, agent Bill, what have they done? What has Mary done? You know, and it's a bunch of suggested things and a wizard to walk through the review, evaluation, and coaching moments, right?
Yeah.
So turning these hours-long processes into a few minutes and turning it from I'm going to wait till Friday to get this done. And now that thing might have happened Monday or last Friday. And now no one has context into it. So they can't have a conversation about it. It can't be a teaching moment. You can't learn and grow from it. And the engagement points are rigid and kind of like, I'm going to do, and the data gets lost in a silo. So now we're creating continuous engagement so that, managers can kind of helicopter in and coach and help you. And so the agents feel way more cared for, they feel more valued, and they're getting on the spot training to be better. So the idea is now, and we're scorecarding and showing progress. So you can actually, again, coach and say, look, great job. You were here last month, you're here, where before that stuff doesn't really exist, right? So the agents, burnout is going to go down, the amount of, kind of just feeling that valued. So if people, don't leave, and we all know that the support industry has had an attrition problem forever, and now with Great Resignation, blah, 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 all those other things, it's really, on one side, you have a world where agents leave a lot, right? And second, in uncertain economic times, and where actually salaries are the highest they ever are in an inflationary economy, keeping your agents for a month, 2 months, a quarter, a half a year, that becomes huge when you have 2,000 agents around the world, right?
Sure.
So what we built with Snowflake is this whole entire framework of engaging agents, coaching them in real time, utilizing the ability to pull out these signals and have it served up to the managers rather than having them go out and hunt for it. So we can look at 100% of the interactions, whereas a manager might look at 2, 3, 4% of the interactions of an individual agent to figure out holistically, really, how are they doing? Understand that immediately, get cues and triggers because we know support and we set all these things up, and do these things continuously in real time so that evaluations aren't this staid thing. They're actually happening kind of all the time and really close to the teachable moments so that the impact is greater. And the way that can impact the longevity and the tenures of these agents, not only is it great from a financial perspective, because the longer you keep agents, that's great dollars and cents.
Sure.
But the customer experience improved because what do you have? You have, longer tenured, more, experienced, better knowledgeable agents who are providing a better level of support every time.
Yeah.
So it really works on multiple levels. And that's the kind of thing where when you think of a PLG or those types of products where, it's about getting the right agent with the right answers quickly, because a lot of times this is high volume. This is people that they haven't been a customer for 10 years, and if you take 3 weeks, to get back to them, they're okay. It's our relation. They've been a customer for 3 hours, right? And they need to learn how this works. So getting to that quickly, and these are complex products like Snowflake does. These are hard agents to train.
Yeah. I'm increasingly kind of interested and preoccupied, kind of like spending a time sort of like pondering kind of that whole agent experience and how it's a foundational slab of great customer experience, but it doesn't get as much attention as it deserves. People talk about employee experience and it tends to be back office type stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of the employee experience type stuff is all about kind of like possibly workforce management if you're in a contact center space, workforce optimization, scheduling, all that type of stuff. Or when do you take a break? How do you book some time off? When your shift is, all that type of things. But the thing that the gap between that employee experience where it currently is and then the customer experience platforms is the agent experience. So it's like this, what is the operational kind of bit? Like, and how I describe it's like, how do you operationalize excellence in the moment? Particularly when you bear in mind that despite the fact that you've got this massive amount of investment in digital self-service kind of channels, that different sources report that email, phone, video, live, semi-live channels still take up between 40, up to 60%, depending on what research resources you use. Those are the go-to channels for people. And given that, it's all relying on the agent and their expertise and what we can do to help them kind of like deliver that excellence in the moment.
Yeah.
And that's so important. And I know there's things kind of coming and kind of like there's that sort of whole platform kind of space is evolving and emerging around whole facilitation, orchestration, being proactive, preemptive, all this and predictive and all that sort of stuff. But, it's a super interesting space. And I'm really pleased that you guys are leading into it. Joe, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I think all the points that Martin talked about are focused on how do you enable agents who are the frontline interface with your customers to deliver a better customer experience. And that is really game changing for companies. And I think some of the points you were starting to get into, Adrian, are really about how do you improve employee engagement, the frontline agents. We years ago at a software company, our CEO used to say, E plus C equals S. Focus on employees who deliver for your customers and then they deliver for shareholders. This was a big company, right? And it's like, that's too pie in the sky, 100,000 foot level to really make a difference. But here we're talking about, I've seen some research that suggests that in addition to helping employees do their work better and reduce the stress and all the back blockers, the back end, back office stuff that you were talking about, the number one thing that we can do as leaders to help our employees be engaged and improve the enjoyment that they get is to help them learn, help them grow their careers, and help them advance. And that's largely what this coaching initiative is focused on, is helping employees do just that. And that will drive engagement, higher retention, and yes, customer experience.
Yeah. I think it's absolutely right, Joe. I think there's Dan Pink has a way of kind of describing this where he talks about his MAP approach, like mastery, autonomy, and purpose. And I think it's the wrong order. It should be like purpose, and then mastery, and then autonomy, PMA, but that doesn't sound, sounds too much like project management association or something like that. So it's probably not right. But if you get the purpose right, people know why they're there and what they're there to do. And then you figure out how do you kind of equip them with the mastery to do their roles, whether that is kind of coaching and support or and tools and systems and education and access to knowledge and all these different things. And then you just let them get on with it. And you circle back on that kind of autonomy and kind of mastery and stuff. Then you're going to be okay, because actually, I think that people that choose to go into support, the largest number of those people that go into support and service and just trying to help kind of people, they want to do a good job. And our fundamental job is help them do a good job. Get out of their way.
And that it's one of the reasons why agent burnout is an issue. It's not because they're forced to overwork sometimes. It's their nature. They want to help. They want to do these things. And it's interesting where, you see people. We were talking with Snowflake when they were building this product, and we're saying, they were doing research and looking at things and trying to find out how people like to work. And some people wanted to review cases on Saturday and do it this way because, I like the weekend. It's like, it's that kind of thing because I can, I have less distractions around me, so I can actually focus on helping the hardest cases. So it's, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there's a personality for support, and it's precious, right? And keeping that, and almost helping them help themselves not burn out is something that we can do with the technology, right? And the great thing is you talked about the channels. And the cool thing about B2B is like 70% of cases are text-based, right? It's email or something like that. They're logging a case on the portal. That gives us an enormous edge to be able to analyze that quickly and to equip managers and agents with tools and insights to be better much more easily than if it's always like voice-based, real-time, quickly. And that's the cool thing, and why we target B2B, honestly, like first is that text-based, the pace of it gives us a lot of opportunity to make a difference. And it's really, really cool because, it's almost like a proving ground, right? Where if we can take these signals, we can start reading these things, and it takes a few minutes, not a few seconds, but we can be extremely helpful in uplifting and up-leveling the support experience. The benefits are huge. When people are reducing case escalations by 40%, that's if you have 10 escalations and then 4 of them didn't happen, that's a lot happier customers, right?
Yeah.
You see numbers go up. It's huge. It's needle moving in a big way.
Awesome. So that's really cool. That's really interesting. And I'm really I'm pleased to hear that you're kind of like, you're leaning in on all this. Is there anything else that we've missed out that you'd like to add before we zoom out a little bit and ask you some kind of broader sort of industry kind of questions? Joe, Martin, anything you want to add that we've missed?
Obviously, I could talk for days about this.
Yeah, let's zoom out.
Let's zoom out. So, fine. So, zooming out, we've come through what I'm calling in inverted commas the pandemic years, and I've been asking people, what are some of the biggest lessons that they've learned that they're going to carry forward, and how that's going to help them navigate some of the key challenges that lie ahead. Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I think first of all, I'm in Boston this week visiting my family. I haven't seen my dad in over a year. He's not doing great, but he's making progress, and I think this has all been due to the pandemic. And in the world of business, remote is here to stay. We've learned how to adapt as people and as companies. And that speaks volumes in terms of positivity. I'm an eternal optimist about the human condition and the human nature. We've adapted. I think we've also learned that human connection is incredibly important. And we miss the face-to-face. And I think that's had a negative impact on a lot of our kids. And it's also had a negative impact in business. And we're starting to ourselves at SupportLogic reinvest in those personal face-to-face connections through events and experiences. And that's important to keep doing that. I think we've also dismantled some of the prior assumptions about how things have to be done, which is exciting. It's innovative and disruptive, and that support experience lies right in the heart of that. So I think that's how I think about it coming out of the pandemic.
Awesome. Martin?
Very similar, but kind of I'll take a different perspective, is really having the mindset of truly being results oriented, especially in kind of businesses like ours. Just because you're working remote doesn't mean you have to sit at your home desk and do exactly what you would have done in the office right? But just somewhere else. And being able to embrace the flexibility, being able to embrace, whether that's geographical, whether that's, how you want to interact and do things, it's that kind of thing where, if my team members, they still come up to me and say, they'll Slack me and say, I've got a doctor's appointment. I'm going to be gone for 30 minutes at a time where I wouldn't have met with them anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I say, I don't care. Like, are you getting your work done? And that's the kind of thing where 4 years ago.
You do care because you're like going, are you okay?
Well, I care that, yeah, but you know what I'm saying? I don't care that you're going to be gone because I know that you can work, if you go from 5 to 5:30 because you didn't go, these things don't matter. And while the one thing we act like just one thing changed, that it's people are working from home, but everything else is it, and it's not. And we need to embrace that. And we need to Joe's point, we need to think about that and not just embrace that, but really, really leverage that to become, innovators in the way that we think and become results oriented. And that changes a lot of things in how we work. And we always talked about before the pandemic, the future of work is going to be this, that, and the other thing. And then it happened and everyone acted like none of that prognostication ever happened. And we were all like, what's going on? And it just happened to happen in like a day. Right. So that kind of freaked us out. Yeah. But I think I think the way we approach, everything from a work perspective is changing. And I think the next generation, the kids who grew up during this will really help solidify that. And this will be normal for them, where for us, it's, we're just old guys trying to figure it out.
Well, I think the thing is, that there's a lot of, there was a lot of forced unlearning, or just kind of like you could get deal with it, and then the longer term rewiring of what is normal, says in inverted commas, is we'll redefine what normal is, because normal is not what we thought it was, and I think that's really interesting. But thinking about all of that sort of stuff, and thinking about kind of what we've come through and what we've learned and everything else. And we've talked about like a bunch of stuff, right? And so I always kind of think about, rather than having a rummage around and then going, ta-da, leave yourself kind of like to it and say, I always like people to boil it down and say, if you were speaking to people on this kind of podcast and you were to have like one piece of advice that you said to them, if you want to improve your experience broadly, customer and employee, you want to improve the experience, do this one thing, what would it be, Joe?
I would say truly listen to your customers and employees, and not just cursory through static surveys, right? But through a continuous feedback collection, right? And really spend the time to understand the feedback and act on those, make decisions that will improve outcomes for your customers and employees.
Awesome. Martin?
Yeah, I mean, it's much the same thing. I mean, it's embracing the new technologies that do exactly what Joe's saying, because it's easier than ever now. The great thing is these are not super intrusive, unwieldy, giant AI hulking platforms. They're cloud applications that you can deploy almost immediately and start consuming all of your interactions and start learning, right? And you need to, but the one thing is you need to be open to hearing the bad as well as the good, right? Sure. And taking that action, right? And that's the very cool thing, is because now we have the ability to consume that information and process it in ways that, it's kind of mind-blowing, right? To find these things out. And the cool thing is now a lot of companies also have workflow automation, where we can, you inject that insight into that and you take action quickly. So it's really, that's the kind of mindset that I think you have to have.
Awesome. Yeah, perfect. It's like, it's the fundamentals, regardless of kind of like how complicated and fancy the technology and kind of gets, it's like the fundamentals still matter.
Yeah, we can be customer centric now. It's a lot easier than ever before.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the technology is there to kind of help us. Before, it kind of required a little bit of shoe leather, and kind of time and making kind of space and things, but now it's kind of it's a lot easier to kind of get right into the heart of the insight and then do something about it. So thank you for that. So just to finish off, a couple more things I wanted to ask. As you know, I publish these books, these punk books, as Punk CX and Punk XL. And at the end of all these interviews, I've been asking people for some quick fire sort of like word association games. So if I said to you kind of both, and Martin, I'll come to you first, what one maybe 2 words would you use to describe a more punk approach to CX? And I'll warn you, I'm collecting these words, and I have a list of about over 150 of them to show that it's a broad church and it means different things to different people. So, Martin, what would you say?
Can I do 3?
Okay.
I say scrappy, nimble, and authentic.
Scrappy, nimble, and authentic. Perfect. I'm making a note here.
Those are good.
I think I probably got 2 of them, but don't think I've got scrappy. So I think you've definitely got 1 on the list. So that's kind of good, good news. Joe, what do you think?
Can I use Ramon or Sex Pistol?
Sure.
These are punk words. No, I think in all seriousness, the first words that come to mind are innate, and that might be aspirational, but it goes without thinking. It's natural order of the world. The other one, maybe half a step back from that, is intuitive. I'm guessing that one's come up a lot.
I think intuitive is on there, but I don't think innate is. So I will definitely look that up. So that's cool. We got 2 new words. Awesome. Brilliant. So thank you. And then one final thing, because the world's a pretty weird place right now. There's all sorts of stuff. We don't need to name it. It's kind of like lots of people are dealing with lots of different stuff in lots of different places, depending on who you are. And you go in the news and it's like doom scrolling kind of like every day. And it's just like, wow. So, and I'm sort of like frustrated by the lack of good news stories or really things that are going to make me kind of smile. Not necessarily big smile, but even just a little smile, kind of like, oh, that's nice. So I've been asking people on the last kind of like few podcasts as a wrap up to tell me what they from their perspective, what's the most interesting, positive, or exciting thing that they've seen in the last week. And this time I'm going to go to Joe first.
Well, I shared my personal anecdote, being here with my family and my dad, and seeing some improvement. This is why we do what we do, is for the people we love and in our families, and that's been front and center for me this week. I think on the global stage, probably the biggest thing that I've been excited about, it's an apolitical, I'll make a judgment call here, new piece of news in a very polarized political world. But I think the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA that was passed, is it a week ago? Maybe 8 days ago. Look, regardless of where you stand on the political spectrum, the fact that there's a focus on improving healthcare, reducing prescription drug costs for seniors, and focusing on the environment, clean energy as an investment to yield a better world for ourselves and our children and our grandchildren, I think is probably the most profound piece of good news that's happened this week.
Awesome. Thank you. Martin, what do you think?
For me, I got 2 things. One is on the personal side. I've got 2 kids. One is almost 4, and one is about almost 1.5. They finally started like kind of talking to each other and like recognizing that each other exists. So they're playing with each other now, which is both like they're having like fun, which is both awesome but also scary, because now they're starting to scheme together, which is also that right. And the other thing is, it's kind of like, we talk about the environment, we talk about these things. I'm going to go like out of the world. The Webb telescope images of Jupiter that came in like yesterday was really cool, because I like to think I'm a space nerd, and I didn't know that Jupiter had rings. Did everyone know Jupiter had rings like Saturn?
Just thought of Saturn.
I had no idea Jupiter had rings, and I saw the rings in the thing, and that's the kind of thing that, I want to pull it back. I'm going to be hokey. The kind of stuff that we do is like putting a new higher definition on like support, right? It's like kind of like rethinking it. It's like when you actually can start to analyze and get deeper and a higher resolution into what you're doing, that's like the signals that we can kind of pull out, right? Mm-hmm. And that's, it's seeing things, seeing the customer relationship and the experience through a new lens, right? And it was really cool to me to see there's Joe's new lenses. And that was really cool, because it's like, oh, it's Jupiter. I know Jupiter. And then I looked, I said, wait, I don't know Jupiter. Right? Jupiter's old hat. And I was like, so that's the kind of thing is, every every marketer, every support leader, every chief customer officer, every CEO, you can always go and look back with a new lens and learn a lot about your customers and take action from that.
Awesome. There's some big lessons in there. So, gentlemen, thank you for that. Thank you for the for sharing those kind of like stories, because they, as you see, I'm smiling because I'm kind of thinking about the things you're saying. So that's always kind of like, that's a good thing. But I just want to say, congratulations on the work that you're doing, and thank you for it, because I think that you've seen that kind of like more of a higher definition into kind of like or higher resolution into support is hugely added value, and it's going to help a lot of kind of people, not just customers but also agents. But thank you also for sharing your time and your insight and your experience with me today. That's been awesome.
Thank you, Adrian.
Yeah, thank you, Adrian. Really, really enjoyed the time here. Would love to do it again.
Well, that was cool. I hope you enjoyed it. I did, and I always do actually, because I always learn something new when I speak to some of these amazing kind of people. And it's always something new that I can incorporate into my writing, speaking, workshops, and other sort of advisory work that I do. Now, if you're interested in learning about any of that sort of stuff, then you can find out more about how I work with clients over at adrianswinscoe.com. But one final thing before I go, please consider heading over to iTunes or Spotify or whichever podcast platform you choose to use, and do leave a review. Every little helps, as they say. Anyway, that's all for now. Thank you for listening, and do tune in again soon. All the very best. Cheers. Bye.